The intersection between leasing and marketing has really been fairly non-existent so far. There's sometimes leasing channels, right, which everyone would call a sales channel, and then there's marketing, which is really completely parallel to it. What I think we're going to start to see is the blending of leasing or sales and marketing into one platform, and what that's going to do is really give you a contextual view of how a prospect is moving through a sales pipeline, and what interactions should happen and when with which prospect. That's going to change a lot of how we look at advertising and how we think about our exposure. So multifamily is interesting in that what is commonplace in most transactions today outside of multifamily, you don't see a lot of that. For instance, if you looked at which platforms have an active SMS engine to be able to transact with prospects and residents through text messaging, it's a tiny percentage of them. When you also look at how can people transact online, while you can lease online and pay your deposits online and pay your rent online, the front end of that funnel hasn't been elevated much. It's still pretty similar. So I think what you're going to start to see is the emergence of the ability for a consumer to trade with you in their own currency. And by that, I mean in the way they want to. So whether it's they want to text and text back, or whether it's a prospect or a resident, they want to be able to book appointments online without calling or emailing or web chatting or waiting for a call back, or using web chat for that matter. Again, trading with people in their own currency is where you're going to see our industry start to go and start to embrace and recognize that the companies that are on the leading edge of doing that are going to have a competitive advantage. We're still one of the only industries that actually misses anywhere between 40 and 60% of its inbound sales leads. If you went to a auto shop or car dealership or anywhere else, no one would ever miss, call it, half of their leads. And it poses an interesting problem. So the apartment industry is healthy. So they've found a way to say, hey, I can miss half my leads and still do really well. Where it comes down to, though, is every time you miss a lead, for instance, that's generated from your website, well, those leads convert at about 6%, maybe 7% sometimes, and you have a cost somewhere between $3 and $10, depending on how good your website is, or how much investment you've done on it. Every time you miss one of those leads, you have to replace it with a lead that's going to cost you somewhere between $20 and $30 and convert it somewhere between 2 and 3% typically. So you're going to have to buy twice as many leads that convert, that are 3 times as expensive to replace one lead that you miss from your website. So it's going to be interesting about how our industry continues to recognize that the capturing of those leads is critical. You've seen a couple platforms embrace a little bit of a prioritization model, as meaning you should call this lead before that lead, and that's great. But where it starts is higher up on the funnel, which is how do you actively engage a prospect before prioritization even matters.